how did we even end up with the view of an angry, violent God in the first place? And honestly, we come by it naturally. But before we can talk about the violence in scripture and the violence in history, I want to say that I'm actually glad we don't take an X-Acto knife to the violent parts in our Bibles, to which you might think, what? Why are you glad about that, Bobby? Well, if we deny the violent stories in scriptures, we deny our own place in the story. And I really think we need to take that more seriously. Just how much the Bible reflects us. And there's a case to be made to stare straight at the parts of scripture that are violent and brutal. Doing so welcomes us completely. The very worst parts of us don't make God cower. God can and will work patiently with all of it. So we live with a text that contains violence. We just do. Wishing it were different doesn't make it so. Just like our own hearts and our histories contain violence. There's the story of a family running for their lives from a city set on fire because of its sin. There are holy plagues that destroy land and firstborn babies. There is this hero king who sexually harasses another man's wife and then murders the man to cover his misdeeds. And those three stories aren't even the worst of the scripture's cruelty. There is more sexual violence, there are tens of thousands murdered, there is divine justification for so much of it. And because we are who we are, we drag God along with us. But even as ideas about God change, and they thankfully really truly do over time, scripture's writers don't edit out the shameful parts. And it is freeing to not deny who you've been, but to actually put that out in the open sometimes and to insist on something better going forward. So there are these chapters in Christian history, and you have to wonder, like, are they an ever-dawning state of peace, love, and harmony, reaching for a better future? And no, of course they aren't. We know this. We've been quite terrible, actually. Of course, Christianity begins with murder, so there's that. And there's martyrdom and persecution in the earliest centuries. There's the wars against northern clans and the Crusades in Europe that lasted some like 8 centuries. Yes, 8 centuries. And there's the Protestant Reformation, important for us folks who mostly aren't Catholic. And the Protestant Reformation was a hot mess of corruption and violence and more bloodshed. And of course, we can keep going. There's the complicated relationship between mission and colonialism. There's the clash between experiential spirituality and rationalism. There's slavery. There's the suppression of women in leadership and more wars and more death and more hard questions about God and the universe. Now, all of that can seem so depressing, I know, but I've never actually read the history of Christianity as strictly depressing. I mean, sure it is, but it's more. Tracing how we change the ways we talk about God, and tracing how we change our action in light of what we learn about the world has always provided me with this empowering permission to welcome what is new and to work for something better and to imagine a world way more beautiful and more whole. Because there is a pattern to our very shady past. I think you can trace it too. People resist an unjust status quo, and they agitate, and they force change, and backlash follows. It always follows. And different sides justify their positions, sometimes violently, and everyone loves to pull God onto their side. And then finally we arrive somewhere new, and there's someone there, like on the margins, waving to get our attention. It's Jesus, it's the apostles, it's mystics and mothers and reformers and activists and artists. They show up to remind us that, yeah, we get a little lost along the way. But guess what? In all that clumsy, violent, and horrific change, God does not smite us. God does not squash us. God does not scream at us to hurry up and get it right already. Our violence does not make God violent. We really don't need help for that.
Hey, thanks for making it through to the end of that. If you're interested in what we're doing here at Commons, then give us a subscribe, a like, all of that stuff. And by all means, post a comment and we'll continue the discussion there. You can also join our Discord for the ongoing dialogue here in our community. Anyway, have a great week. We'll see you soon.